An author that's had significant impact on my professional and personal career is Malcolm Gladwell. He's just written some amazing books and really, in my opinion, paradigm-shifting books such as Blink, Tipping Point, and his most recent book, The Outliers. Today we're going to focus on one of his books and tell you how it relates to facial cosmetic surgery. Another video I shot was called Blink, and the idea of Blink is his other book is that we judge one another that fast. We make a decision if someone looks good or bad. In my opinion, what I'm trying to do for you is to get you a blink effect when someone sees you and you look a lot better. His other book, Tipping Point, talks about when you start creating a certain level, you get a tipping point where there's this social craze, there's this huge movement that occurs. And what I want to talk to you about is how I apply the tipping point for the face. It actually harkens back to another video I shot called the 5% rule in plastic surgery. And what that meant was I do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, 5% each that add to a point where it looks great. And what is that point? It's a tipping point. And how do you know you've reached a tipping point? Well, it's when you and I look at it and you go, wow, I think I've got it. And for me, that's something that I always strive to hit a tipping point. So for example, I had a lady yesterday, I was trying to get one syringe of Perlane into the cheek and chin to make it look better, but she was highly gaunt in the cheek. And so what my first guess was I was going to try to spread that over 2 or 3 areas. I started putting the cheek and it started to look good, and I realized she didn't look that much better. So I had to wind up using the whole syringe in priority zone 1, which is the anterior cheek, not to make her look cheeky, but to make her look blended and soft and feminine. And I hit a tipping point where she and I both went, wow, we got it. So I couldn't do the chin with that syringe, and that would have been because if I spread the material too thin, I would not have reached a tipping point. Now, there's a difference of a tipping point and an avalanche. And I had a lady yesterday that was a very beautiful lady that looked younger than her age, but she had her lips done, and her lips were very large, and they didn't match her face. And so I felt that was not just a tipping point, the doctor had gone all the way over here. So how do you achieve a tipping point and not an avalanche? Well, essentially, for me, what's so important is an eye. If you look at it, if your eye is good and you say, that looks great, you need more here, let's not do any more, that's a huge component. The other way to achieve a tipping point and not an avalanche is not to focus on the face in a compartmentalized fashion. What does that mean? What it means is, let's say I say, you know what, Doc, I just want my lips done. And you have a slightly older face. And I start creating some lips that are not too big, but they may not match your face. Even if the lips by absolute quantity are not large, they may not look good on your face, and that's a judgment call, and that's where the eye comes into place. So what I usually try to do with my patients is try to look at little areas to create a tipping point so I can reach a tipping point without overdoing one area so that you just have one area that looks good and it doesn't match anything, or it's just not good enough. Because even if, let's say for example, someone comes in and says, Doc, only thing that bothers me is my eye bags, I just got to get rid of them, I do that, I'm going to look great. And oftentimes it's not enough, because if the eye bag's improved and they're still gaunt in the cheek or gaunt across the eye or too heavy in the jowl, I haven't reached a tipping point. Now, it doesn't mean you need to do everything, because once you've reached a tipping point, in my opinion, after that, we start achieving gravy. An example is this morning, this lady that came in and she was saying, what can I do to make my face better? She was interested in just filling lines on her upper lip. And I said, you know what, you're not going to even reach a tipping point. No one's going to see it. It's not going to be better. And in my professional estimation, you're going to waste your money with me. So I thought the fat transfer filling around the eyes, cheeks would not fix all the little micro flaws in her face, but it'll get to a point when someone looked at her that would look great. And then I was talking about how I did my mom's hands, how they look good, and then I told her, look, don't do your hands. In your situation, your neck is the second most important thing to do. So I said, if you want to allow me to prioritize it, you're going to reach your tipping point after your fat transfer. Your neck is going to be your gravy. I think it's an important element for you to do, and your hands in this situation are probably the least important. An example is opposite is another lady who came to me who was very young. She was in her early 40s, had very, very gaunt hands and a relatively gaunt face, not too bad. And I told her in her situation, the hands preceded the neck because I thought we would reach a tipping point with the face, and then the gravy is on top, is doing the hands. So the goal is to let you know that I always want to reach a tipping point where you and I go, wow, this looks great. But I don't want to overdo it, where some area is just overdone because we've compartmentalized the face, and what I call it, we create an avalanche, which is just too much in one area that never looks good. So my goal is to give you the judgment, to tell you, here are the areas I think we can get there, and the things we can do a little bit better. One more example, I just saw a lady about 10 minutes ago, and she had done one syringe with me, and it looked really good. And she was young enough that I knew that I could do one syringe of Perlane and in 4 areas and really hit 70% of my result. Today she came back, she goes, is there anything else I can do? I said, honestly, I could make this better with 1 more syringe. And I told her, here's the goal. Your first syringe is going to have hit you 70% of your result. Today is going to be at 30%. And if I had only delivered 5%, she would have walked out my office going, that was a waste. And I never want to have someone waste their money. So, but at least same time, I told her, look, the reason I only did 1 syringe for you last time is I was able to hit you 70%. And then the remaining is 30%. So we've already reached a tipping point, but now we're in the phase where I can get you a little bit better and enough that it'll be worth the money. And so that's hopefully a good video about understanding how I utilize the concept of tipping point in facial plastic surgery.